Heidi.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming to our last graduate student seminar of the semester. Can't believe we're here today. Today we're going to be hearing from Baylie, who's going to be telling us about shark research in Bimini and other places. So take it away, Baylie.
Cool, thanks everyone for coming. We have a nice small group today, so you can ask lots of questions. And I'll probably just still save the questions for the end, just so we have time to get through it all. But you all have probably mostly heard a lot about my nurse shark stuff. So I'm going to be talking about the other research that I've been involved in today too as well, and why it's important that we are doing this research overall, and what I found to be the most effective for actually communicating this information also. So to begin, I always show this slide, but why is it important that we actually study sharks or rays in general? And that's because as we begin to study them more, we found out their population declines and how much it has affected their populations with overfishing and other things that are leading to that. And what we found out is that most species are going from, I don't know, where they were mostly least concerned. As we begin to study them more and find out more about them, we found that a lot of them have been downlisted to endangered, vulnerable, and critically endangered. And most of this, or not most of it, but a lot of it is driven by due to trade and overexploitation. So what this is showing is that throughout the years and throughout time, some longline effort, like seine efforts, fishing efforts have actually increased for sharks over time, whereas in the, I don't know, 80s, 70s, they weren't even really targeted that much for catch, and it's actually increased a lot. And what we found from that is the probability of like fishing sharks sustainably has gone way down, and that's because we begin to understand more about them in terms of they have slow growth, they have low fecundity, long gestation periods, things that make it really difficult for their populations to recover if they're being affected by things like trade. And a lot of this trade is driven by something called the shark fin trade. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with that. Yeah, so basically, fishermen will go out, catch sharks, and actually take their fins off, and they'll sell it for things like shark fin soup. And it's a huge demand across the world, actually, and across Europe, other Asian countries. It's more popular, but it is occurring in places that are closer to home as well. But there are ways that sharks can be fished sustainably. And in the US, there are some regulations in place that help do this, where you can obtain proper permits. You have like size limits, different species that you're able to catch, because we know more about their stocks and how they're able to recover. We know there's a lot of numbers of them. But for other species that we've studied too, we actually have been able to put limits on them because we know it takes them longer to recover. And this is just kind of showing like some fisheries are for them. So Alaskan skate is a huge fishery up here, and it's in the green, so it's actually sustainable. We've seen their stock numbers are actually doing okay. Whereas for the blue shark, it can be a bit more difficult, where a lot of them are more like endangered. I think their status is endangered, and there's a huge market for them for their fins, because they have these really, really big pectoral fins and a really big dorsal fin. So they get a lot of money out of that. This is just to show that there are ways that sharks can be fished sustainably. It's not all bad. We shouldn't stop fishing all sharks. We can just put some limits on it and make it better. And because of this too, there's been some shark protected areas actually that have been established around the world, whether that's a marine reserve, also like a specific place that's protecting sharks specifically, and says, we're gonna just put protections on this place where you cannot fish specifically sharks. And this is just a graph showing kind of some of those areas around the world. I think the blue is just key biodiversity areas. And it's just to put these places on the map in order to help protect important habitats for them. So getting into the Bahamas specifically, where I've actually done most of my work, the Bahamas is actually a big area of hope. And that's because there was a commercial longline ban in 1993 that actually was put in place, because what commercial longlines do is are these really big lines that are just set out in the water. And even though they weren't targeting sharks, they would be targeting maybe larger fish like tuna or some swordfish or something. Sharks would be caught as bycatch a lot, and they don't do well when they're on the line for a while. And so this protection was put in place where they can have no commercial longlining, no fishing for using longlines in 1993. And also then in 2011, the Bahamas was established as a shark sanctuary. So the whole area, this whole outlined area here, is an area where you're not allowed to actually fish shark at all. If you accidentally catch one like recreationally fishing or something, you have to cut the line immediately and just let them go. You can't even land them or bring them in to shore. So it's awesome and amazing protection that's put in place in this specific area. As you can see too, there are some shortcomings. This is a very large area for fisheries managers to cover. So unfortunately, at all times, they can't be looking all throughout the water in every single area. So it's up to people to kind of follow this regulation and also help keep each other in check, I guess, too. So most of my work is at a place called the Bimini Shark Lab, and that's this small area here. We kind of have to zoom in order to see the island. And most of my work was right here off South Bimini, but also all over as well. I lived at this field station for 30 years permanently, and this is where most of the work was conducted. And we had these boats right here, so we could just take them straight out to whatever we were going to do for the day. So what's really cool about this specific location and this field station is that it was established in 1990. And so they've been doing research now for 36 years. They have really long-term data sets to work with. And that's what makes it so cool, because it gives so many opportunities to actually give baseline data for sharks that doesn't exist really in many other places around the world. But since 1990, they've supported 24 PhD students and 38 master students, which I think has gone up now because we put this number in 5 years ago, so we need to update it. And also there's been around 150 peer-reviewed publications that's come out of it, and we've been in 200 documentary productions. And so those are just ways that we share our work. And most of the early work was done on a shark called the lemon shark. So lemon sharks can be super itty bitty right when they're born, so they get very large when they become sexually mature. But there are also shark species that occur across the island, so I'll highlight some of those. So the bull sharks, and bull sharks are actually only about, they're only in Bimini from maybe about like October to May. They spend their time, but they leave in the summer. They usually go to around Florida, the different areas of the Bahamas for different reasons that we're still trying to understand. But they really like this area right here because it has a dock and fishermen go there at the end of the day and clean all of their scraps. And bull sharks are really opportunistic and they're like sweet, easy meals. So they'll kind of be around there. We'll see great hammerhead sharks. Great hammerhead sharks mostly occur off of this whole side of the island, but I've highlighted right here because there's a provisioning site for them and a dive site that's been since 2014, I think now, so a little over 10 years. Every winter is when these big hammerhead sharks will actually return. We don't see any juveniles, any small hammerhead sharks in the area. We only see the really big ones, and they'll come actually spend time in this area, and you can actually dive with them. It's a huge industry for the Bahamas. Then also there's Caribbean reef sharks, another dive site that exists for them and is very popular and brings in a lot of tourism money. They occur the reefs off of South Bimini, and they actually don't move very far from that location. They stay pretty close to those reefs there. And then also tiger sharks. Tiger sharks can mostly be found a lot over here because there's these shallow seagrass beds where there will be sea turtles, and that's kind of their favorite preferred prey. But they can be found all around the island too, and we will talk a bit more about them. There's also black tip sharks. Tip sharks are a 6-foot predator at their full size, I guess, 6-7 feet. And it's interesting because Bimini gets kind of like in between. They don't get the smaller black tip sharks or the really big black tips. It's right in between. So kind of those immature, juvenile sort of individuals. And then also lemon sharks. We will talk about lemon sharks because that's what most of the research has been done on in Bimini. And also I put nurse sharks over the map, and that's not because they're my favorite, but it's also because you could find them absolutely anywhere around the island, any habitat, any size class, small ones, huge ones, all of them. So let's start with lemon sharks a little bit. So I'll highlight some of the coolest research that I think has been done with them. So what we found out, because we've had these long-term surveys that have been going on for, I said, like over 30 years, there's a project where they've looked at actually like trying to catch all of the baby lemon sharks that are born in a specific area, a small lagoon area. And what we found from that, from taking genetics information, is we have found that lemon sharks, the females that are mature, they actually have natal philopatry. So what that means is every 2 years, when it's time for them to give birth, they will actually go back to the same exact nursery that they were born in to then give birth to their pups, which is super cool. I think that's pretty awesome for a shark species. We were able to find this out by sampling all of the juveniles or newborns that were born in the area and seeing which like female individual they were related to. And we're like, oh my goodness, okay, every 2 years in the same nursery, they're related to this female that was born there 15 years prior. Pretty cool information. Unfortunately, in these areas as well, where these lemon sharks tend to go to drop their pups, there's been a lot of habitat alteration over this 30-year period. So in 2000, the government of the Bahamas committed to protecting 20% of area. And in 2008, there was actually a North Bimini Marine Reserve that was slated to be become like a marine reserve protected area. But unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of progress made on this. It's kind of just been announced since 2008, no progress. And actually in 2021, there was a report put out of areas that they wanted to provide further protection for. And those are any of the areas outlined in red. In Bimini used to be outlined in red, and now it's not anymore, which is unfortunate. We don't really know the reason, but hopefully those protections can be put back in place in the future, because this area is very important nursery area for not only lemon sharks, but many other species as well. And in this specific area, what we've seen is in 2002, pretty lush mangroves all around. But in 2014, there was a big development year that happened because they were building a huge hotel and resort in this area. So they took out a lot of the mangroves in this area. And mangroves are important because they provide a lot of storm protection, like against any big hurricanes that come, but also just for like all the nursery habitat for all the species there. Then in 2018, they actually started their big project on putting a lot of different hotels, resort areas in this area, which is interesting because like this land didn't exist before, as you can see like in the previous picture, it's not there. So they've actually created like all this land and dredged up all of it to create land to put these houses on. So it's interesting, they're altering that a lot. And so future plans for this area, which are moving forward as far as I know right now, is to actually make this area a golf course with a lot of different homes, which will be interesting because there's not really a lot of abundant like fresh water just available in Bimini either. Like it's salt water. There's no like freshwater lakes anywhere around the island. So it's really getting all the fresh water. Imagine all the fertilizers that are going to be running off in the water, affecting the seagrass in the area, the mangroves. So I don't know, they've kind of done a lot of development in this area and starting to put like a lot of different houses and things over there. They haven't moved forward with this yet, but we'll see. That's why I'm doing the research that I'm doing. I'm trying to still show how important this area is. And what they've actually seen is some effects on the lemon shark populations. So there's this annual survey that is done in Bimini in this lagoon area that I was kind of showing you, where they go out every May to June when they think like all the baby lemon sharks were being born, try to catch every single one. So it's overnight too, because we set out these gill net lines and we don't want the babies to be able to see them while they're swimming. So basically they'll swim into this gill net and they'll try to like back up and their gills will get caught and we can actually see them splash in the water. So we'll go over there like immediately and get them and take care of them. So not a lot of harm to them, but we do that for like 12 hours overnight. We just rotate the boats. What we're doing, there will be like the boat that's going and retrieving the shark, and then there will be a tagging boat where they're actually like tagging them with a specific like indicator tag so we know what individual that is for time, and also measuring and weighing and taking genetic samples. And what we've seen is in big development years, so 2008 I mentioned was kind of a big year, and then 2014, I circled those areas, and what we can see is overall, so the different colors, I should specify this graph more. The different colors are two different nursery areas. So this red area is one called the North Sound, and then the blue one is one called Sharkland. So a lot of the development in 2008 was in North Sound, and we can see a huge drop off that year in the amount of individuals that were caught. And then from 2014 onward in both nurseries, we see kind of a steady decline. So unfortunately, what are these long-term survival rates going to be? That's something that we're going to continue to investigate. So now moving into acoustic telemetry a bit, I'll just kind of give you a background on this because this is most of the research I'm going to be talking about now, because we've done a lot tagging effort in the past 10 years now, and that's what most of the research has been on. But basically, acoustic telemetry looks like this. There's a small tag like this, or it can be like as big as the palm of my hand, depending on the size of the shark that we're putting the tag into. We'll do a small surgery, just like that, and insert that tag in there and then suture that up, do a little surgery. And then this tag specifically, this one can last for a few years, maybe 3 to 5, but there's some tags that we put in sharks that can last for up to 10 years and give us a lot of really cool information. And this is the amount of tags we have out on different species all around the area. There was a project going on with green turtles in 2017. So they had a lot on there, but those have definitely like all fallen out because they had to put those just on their shell. They didn't do a surgery or anything. But we have some stingrays also, 20 nurse sharks, which is the information that I got to use for my project, but 86 in lemon sharks, so quite a bit. And this is what this information kind of looks like. So this individual gets this tag, but these receivers that are all under the water that the tag is able to communicate with. So whenever a shark, say this great hammerhead shark, is swimming in the background and it has a tag, it actually sends out a signal every 2 minutes to one of these receivers that it's closest to. And these receivers have different ranges depending on what habitat they're in or the area. And then we'll go retrieve these receivers every 6 months to a year, download all the information on our computer, and then go put them out again with a new battery. And over Bimini, there's 65 receiver sites. So looks about like that. Covers pretty much of the island as we could. And what we found out from some of this information, so for the great hammerhead sharks and the bull sharks, we found that they really like using the west side of the island. And that's because they like some of the deeper waters too. So on the west side of the island, it drops off super deep into the Gulf Stream pretty quickly. They like using some of those deeper waters. What we can see is, I think it's the lemon sharks, yeah, they have quite a wide space use around the island, but all these nursery areas that are quite important. And just like to use the east side of the island there. But what's cool about this information is that anyone that's using this technology anywhere means that our sharks, if they leave our area, can actually still send signals like in Florida or Gulf of Mexico, throughout the Bahamas, different areas. So we can really get information on where these individuals are going, even outside of Bimini. So what we've seen is, yeah.
Are those black points, are they sensors? Like,
what are these?
Yeah, the small black dots.
Yeah, these are the receivers. Yes, sorry.
Receivers
yes.
Didn't receive any signal from those species.
Right. Yeah. So if it doesn't have like, so yellow is like general use area and the red is the core use area. And these are the receivers. So we didn't see much around the North Island, but we did include tiger sharks in this graph, and tiger sharks definitely use the north side of the island. So yes, good question. Thank you. So this is just like some different species and showing like where they're going. So we're able to see like they're not staying in Bimini. All of them are not staying in Bimini. They're actually going along the east coast of the United States. And we're still trying to find out the importance of this area. And I'll talk about that a little bit and I'm moving into some particular species. So let's talk about tiger sharks now. So this, I wish this video was working more. Oh, hold on. There we go, that's a bit better. This was a juvenile that we saw in 2021, like in the deep waters, and maybe it'll eventually work. It was really cool. It was a really cool sighting because it's actually super rare to see tiger sharks if we're not actually doing research with them, because they tend to stay deep in water are quite elusive. So this was a super cool find and a cool video that we got. And the president of the lab, he did all of his PhD work on the tiger sharks in the area. So we're going to talk a bit about that. So all age classes can be found around Bimini. And so we get those tiny little individuals where you can really see their stripes when they're a lot younger too. Some of those sub-adult kind of in-between teenager individuals, all the way to some of the large pregnant females that we can find in winter. And to give you some scale of how big some of these tiger sharks can be, here's this picture. So this was I think this was the biggest tiger shark that was ever caught in Bimini. And what they were doing here is with the tiger sharks, they'll take like a girth measurement. So they'll actually take a measurement around like the belly up until like the dorsal fin, just to see how wide that area is. And usually they could do that from the boat because the shark wasn't that big. But this individual, this researcher actually had to get in the water in order to get the tape all the way around the female. So she was huge. It was pretty cool. So some information that they've looked at for here is abundance surveys to just see like, is the Bahamas tiger shark population healthy? And compared it to the USA population, which actually put in protection measures in place, I believe, in the early 1990s. So they looked at it from then. So like 1990, that might be 1990 and on, kind of seeing what those trends look like. And what we've seen in the Bahamas, even with that long line ban in 1993 and the shark sanctuary established in 2011, we've seen their population remain relatively stable, which is great. That means that their population's healthy, kind of at carrying capacity, able to have enough resources to be doing good around there. And what we've seen in the US, after protections were put in place, their numbers were able to increase, which was great. And also they're reaching more stable numbers up until now. So great information that we're able to find out. And from the Bahamas, having that long-term data, we're actually able to see these trends over time. Because if we only had, say, about maybe this information of data, we think they were increasing, but seeing it over time, we're able to see they're remaining stable. So I talked about acoustic telemetry. Well, another tagging type that we can do is satellite telemetry. And this is a type of technology that we would actually only put on sharks whose fin breaks the surface, because what happens is there's this little copper piece on it. And whenever that breaks the surface, it actually communicates with satellites like our Earth. It's actually real-time data on our computer and seeing what's going on. So tiger sharks are a shark that swims near the surface. We're able to get that information. So they coupled acoustic telemetry with satellite telemetry, because when they're under the water, the satellite tags don't give us information, but the acoustic tags could. But when they're near the surface, we can get the information from satellite tags. So really fill in those gaps of what's going on overall. And what we found is a lot of movement that we were not expecting. It was really cool because one individual went down all the way to Cuba area and even past there. One individual went all the way up to Canada, which was pretty wild. And that's some really wide-ranging movement. But what I do want to highlight from this is they do have a core use area, this red area right here, around this Bimini, East Florida area. So they're using that area the most. They're going on these long excursions, but they keep returning to these same locations where they were tagged. And this highlights it in two individuals. So one that went all the way up to Canada, went up there, all the way down first to Cuba, and then up to Canada, which is so impressive, honestly. That's such a far distance to travel. And then this individual that went all the way up to Canada and then back to Bimini. And we were able to infer that they actually returned there, even though the satellite information did continue, because the acoustic tags, it picked them up on those receivers again. So with this information I don't want to spoil it, hold on, before I say that. To the part. What I'm also doing with this information is I wanted to find out important reproductive areas for these tiger sharks and see why are they returning to Bimini? Why is this area important for them? Well, we had underwater ultrasounds that helped show if these big females that were coming in were pregnant, and dun, dun, dun. So there's a baby tiger shark actually that we were able to get a really good video of, which is pretty awesome. And tiger sharks can have up to 40 to 80 pups, so they can have quite a bit, which is amazing that we were able to get that really clear view of that one. So from this and from a lot of other ultrasounds that they take into, they determined that Bimini is a very important area for pupping for female tiger sharks, and that's why they seem to be coming back to this area. Now we see her swim off safe. Cool. So that's some stuff about tiger sharks. Let's get into some great hammerhead shark stuff now too. And I've been able to be involved in some of this research as well, which has been super exciting. The tiger shark stuff was kind of before I got there, but great hammerhead stuff has been really awesome to see. So what's cool is that for sharks, we can actually have identifying markers on them. So I talked about this provisioning site where these great hammerheads return to. We can dive with them every day during the field season that they are in the area. So what we've actually been able to do is catalog and ID specific individuals just based on markings that they have on their body. And one way that we're able to do this, usually the first thing we look for is it a male? So that one's a male, it has two claspers, what they're called. If it's a female, they won't have those. And we see that most of the great hammerheads that actually come in the area are females, but we do get some males. So when we see the claspers, we're like, oh, it's probably this individual. Okay. A way we're able to tell even more, so her name is Gaia. She's returned to, I think she first showed up in Bimini, I think since 2013. Yeah, 2013. And she still was here this season too. So she's been coming for quite a long time. But the way we're able to identify her is she has two markings on the base of her dorsal fin. One's from a tag that she was actually, we gave her a tag to give that identifier. So we can look on her ventral pattern, so her belly. If she swims over us, we're actually able to see this kind of hourglass pattern right there. And also, she has a birthmark right there. That's the way I usually identify her pretty quickly as I look for that birthmark. But we actually make sure we see like that birthmark dark pigmentation in 2 or 3 consecutive years, because it could just be a bruise, and we want to make sure it's not a bruise that we're identifying them by. But really cool. So some information we've been able to find out without actually having to like physically tag the individual is we've been able to make a catalog of 60 plus individuals that are visiting the dive site. I think it's up to 80 now, of unique individuals that we see. And there was a student there that was working on actually seeing how much of the ration and portion of food that great hammerheads were getting when they came to the dive site, because they wanted to see if this dive site was impacting their behavior actually, and if they would still be willing to go out to hunt. And what they found is they were obtaining for 70% of their daily ration at the dive site. So it's interesting, because a lot of people ask me, oh, then what do you think about like the ethics of the actual dive site? I'm like, well, great hammerheads are critically endangered, and it's pretty awesome that we keep seeing the same individuals returning. And when they're at this dive site, at least we know they're safe and not like somewhere else. And so, yeah, maybe 70% isn't great, but we've seen that they're still having like natural hunting behavior at night when we're not out diving with them and everything. So it's not completely changing their behavior, but maybe gives them an easier meal to obtain during the day. But with this as well, because we're actually able to identify these great hammerhead sharks, what we've seen is there was this one individual named Scylla. I got to meet her in 2021, the first year I was there. And if you watched any shark documentary with the great hammerhead shark, she was probably the one that you saw. She's a very famous shark. She would visit like the Bimini dive site, but also this really popular dive site called Tiger Beach around Grand Bahama. And divers loved to dive with her. She was so interactive. She would like come and swim right by, do like the coolest thing. She always had a smile on her face too. Smile, looked like a smile. And she was actually tagged in 2020, I believe it was. Yes, in late 2020, because they wanted to see that, okay, where's she going when she's not at the dive site? What's she doing in the summer when she's not here in the winter? And gosh, I think divers had been observing her for over 10 years. But then after she was tagged, she made a trek up to South Carolina, and that was the last we ever heard from her. She never made it back to Bimini, and that next season, we have not seen her again. It's possible that she could be somewhere else, but also her movements were like very predictable, where she'd keep coming to certain areas. So because we've come to know them and because we give them names too, it makes it pretty sad. But also then we're able to see, okay, they're not spending all their time in the Bahamas at these dive sites. They're traveling to other areas, and they don't do well on fishing lines that are able to be done in like the US. So right when they leave the Bahamas, there can be commercial longlining again, that thing I mentioned earlier. And hammerheads don't do good on this line. And since we know they're leaving this area, it's important to still tag them to know why they're going to these areas, how much they're interacting with areas that are heavily fished, to be able to understand them. And so they're actually satellite tagged as well, which was done with the tiger sharks. Also, we want to identify what are these regional spots for the reproduction also, because in order for their populations to be able to grow and continue, we have to know where they're reproducing. And so this was Scylla, that same shark, and actually did an underwater ultrasound on her in 2017, I believe this was. Or maybe it was 2020 when they tagged her too. And what we saw is that she was pregnant. So it's abstract art now. You can't really see like the hammerhead head, I guess, but it looks like these little tuna steaks, if you can kind of see those. Also, when we were in the Florida Keys, we also did get a really cool view of one hammerhead in an ultrasound. At this bottom there, that's their head. The head of like a baby right there, kind of zoomed in right there. It's abstract. You have to know what we're looking at. Me. So what we were able to say is like, okay, so these individuals, when they're in Bimini, are pregnant, but we don't see any baby great hammerheads. So where are they going after this? Where are they going to then drop their pups? Well, we think it's the Florida Keys, and that's from some collaborators doing some research. Also, we began to start doing research in the Florida Keys because we found a lot of connection between Bimini and the Florida Keys and Florida area as well. So I've actually been able to be involved in some of this research, which was pretty cool. This was like kind of a scary moment, but it was pretty cool. And then we started tagging some of the large individuals that we find there and some of the juvenile hammerheads, because they do have smaller hammerheads in the Florida Keys. So we think it's kind of like a nursery area there more. And we think those big hammerheads are possibly coming over here to drop their pups. So pretty cool. So now I'll just mention a little bit about the nurse sharks because I can't not. So I'll talk about in line with this acoustic telemetry kind of theme that we're going on here. So the reproductive biology is actually some of the most understood of all sharks in the entire world, which is pretty cool. There have been some researchers that have been studying them for the past 40 years now in this small area in the Florida Keys, understanding their reproductive behavior. And their benefit, they pretty much just rest at the bottom all day. Just kind of like that, like all these pictures I was able to get. That one I was like, sorry, I disturbed you. Start swimming away. But so all age classes of nurse sharks can be found around the island too. So some of the smallest ones to all the way to the adult individuals. And so to talk about some of the acoustic information that I found from them again, from some of that tagging that we did, nurse sharks are typically thought not to be moving that far, resting at the bottom all day, which we do see them doing. So they are capable of performing like some long distance migrations and going and spreading out to all these different areas, where in like Great Bahama, they seem to use a lot, and also the East Coast of the United States. And also there's one individual that went down to Florida Keys and spent a ton of time down there. So really cool to just expand, in other areas of the Bahamas too. And it's just cool with this technology to be able to expand like what we know of some certain shark species. Again, I love this individual story. So this was a female. She was tagged in 2017. And we saw 6 months later, she had traveled all the way up to South Carolina, which was really cool because nurse sharks are barely reported in South Carolina. And there's only about 6 receivers up there. So it's pretty incredible that she was even detected at all. And that would be 773 kilometers at distance traveled, which is the longest distance traveled by a nurse shark to date. But then she returned back down to Bimini, which makes this movement a migration because she actually returns to the site of tagging. And there'll be a total round trip distance of 1,547 kilometers, definitely farther than we thought nurse sharks could travel previously. And then also the next year, she was performing some possibly similar behavior going back up the East Coast and then back to Bimini. So Bimini definitely serves some important area for her specifically and for some other shark species that are performing this. So really cool information that we were able to gather from that. And then we're doing some work in the Florida Keys with them now too. And here is we're actually starting to acoustically tag some individuals there also, because there hasn't really been a ton of like tagging projects with them. So started tagging them, and also I'm starting to take some ultrasounds on some individuals to see if some of them are pregnant, and those sharks can have like 30 to 40 pups, so quite a large amount. And from the ultrasound that I took in 2022, I found out that one of the females was pregnant. So now I have their abstract on minds again, and you see these little like tuna steaks, kind of. You see these little individuals. So yeah, this female was definitely pregnant, which was pretty cool. And I just want to highlight some other cool stuff that we've kind of like dived into, no pun intended, which is some deep sea research. We have a partnership with an organization that has a submarine and a huge yacht. And so I've actually been able to go into the deep sea. I think it was like 1,300 feet is how far down I went. So it was completely dark. Once we got down there, we had to use some lights and lasers to be able to see and measure everything. And what's cool, why I like to highlight this research is because it shows you what most shark species actually look like. I showed you kind of weird individuals, like the big ones, but the ones that we're used to because they're coastal, we encounter them more. But actually, these small sharks here, and like the one here, these are what most sharks look like. And most of them are deep sea. So it was really cool to have the opportunity to actually go down and see kind of what's in the deeper waters surrounding Bimini. And also this individual here, which has the coolest eye. It was like green and reflecting back at us. It was pretty awesome. And then, okay, before I get to this one, sorry. I kept the sound in this one because I want to show you what it sounds like, basically, when we found this shark. So we know that great hammerheads are in the area, and we had guessed that maybe scalloped hammerheads kind of around Bimini. We weren't sure. So we went down to the submarine. We had the opportunity. Oh, why is it not working? Hold on. Okay. Oh. Okay, here we go. A scalloped hammerhead, which was really cool and really rare. It's not really working. So those were lasers to like measure. any individuals, and she swam perfectly by it. It was awesome. Okay, sorry, this isn't working super well, but you can kind of see what's going on. Yeah, really cool. We were taking really cool videos of her experience. I think it was only the second confirmed sighting ever of skeleton in her head being screaming. And it was cool because stuff talked up to everyone that was like above us who was skeleton, we heard it was pretty cool. Yeah, so moving into that as well because it provides a whole other avenue of seeing these individuals because we can only really see what's, you know, in the shallow water. So now we're able to see what's in the deep sea as well. Also, what I found to be like the most important, I love being involved in all this research. I really enjoy what I do. To be the most, I guess, influential. I don't know. It means the most to me is being able to share this experience with as many people as possible, whether it's with you all or going out and sharing it with individuals at my study site or whatever that means. And I found it to be the best way to like communicate information just about why sharks are important too overall and helps people care once they're actually able to get in the environment or just be able to see what's going on. So this is a provisioning site we have there for southern stingrays. And as you can see, they know what's up. They know what they're for. And also here's a nurse shark right over there too, that kind of, they come in close also. So just being involved in like educator courses that I'm able to do there. I think this was in 2023, right over there. And we have educators come in every summer. And so I'm involved like helping teach them workshops and what activities they can actually bring into the classroom to get their students inspired. Just super fun. So I've been doing that for 5 years now, which is pretty crazy to say. Also through study abroad courses, third year of our UNL study abroad course for students here to be able to bring them to the field site and get to experience some really cool stuff. This was last year, I think. And then yeah, these teacher and educator courses I talked about as well. Also going to scientific conferences and being able to share this information with scientists, different students that are just interested is really awesome. This was like, I was invited to do something for like National Geographic. That was pretty cool. It's called Shark Hunt. If you ever want to go, people can go and there's like a bunch of different booths and you can buy all the shark stuff. It's in Tampa. It's so fun. But then also one of my favorite ways to share information is with informal education and science communication. I love just going out to the community, doing something informal, doing a fun presentation, playing games with kids. And I feel like that's the best way to really try to capture someone's attention in like 5 minutes, right? And if they want to stay with you and ask questions, I think that's awesome. Also just sharing photos and different things on social media, I also really enjoy. My acknowledgements and everyone that's made this work possible, and there are so in this, but different media credits, and also this wouldn't be possible without the staff volunteers that are at the Bimini Shark Lab. And thanks for listening. I know it's a lot, so if anyone has a thought. Yeah. Thanks. I wanted to teach y'all about something else instead of nurse sharks all day, but just
So I had a question. So when you deploy those acoustic data recorders, do you follow like a system to deploy them or like the distribution of them?
The receivers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that they started the array in like 2014, 2015, so this was like before I was there. But from what I understand, they tried to put in all different habitat types. So from seagrass, coral reefs, sand flats, mangrove area, and try to like capture all those different areas. Designed to be like not overlapping and not have overlapping signals, but they did some receiver testing on it later and they think like some of the signals were kind of overlapping. So we found some ways to like remove that in our data. But yeah, so it was designed sort of in mind to just cover all different habitat types. Yeah.
That like in the picture you saw that the ones on the south side like followed like more grid shape pattern, and then later on you could see more of a curvature and deployment. And how would that sort of, because essentially your detections depend on how you deploy those receivers. So have you tried different arrangements and checked how that affects your...
There's some unpublished data that someone was looking at in 2020 and they were actually like comparing it, but I don't think it ever got finished because it was 2020. So unfortunately, we weren't able to finish that, and then we actually had to like stop the receiver array in 2021. There's been like some issues with permitting in the Bahamas and doing research there, so we haven't been able to do a ton there since 2021. And we were moving, like we were starting to do some of that research and see how much that influenced some of our detections, but also there was some other acoustic tracking technology that was also used from a different PhD student, and she placed it in different areas. So she was working on that a lot too. I don't have like a very specific answer because I never got to work on that specifically, but I knew that they were looking at that. So yeah.
And these are omnidirectional, right? You put one in and it will record from all directions.
Yes, yep. So radius out there about like, I think the longest one goes to like 958 meters. Like
That's
it's
quite big.
wide, yeah. And I think the shortest detection range is still like 500 meters, so still like quite a decent area. But yeah. Yes.
So you say that most of the sharks always return to where they were born. So I kind of think it's kind of where you feel like where you're born it's safe. So are they following that blindly, or it's about the environment? Because if there is habitat loss, they will find that a suitable
Yeah.
place, or it just blindly where I was born, that's where I'll go to reproduce.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And that's something we're still looking at a little bit. And with the lemon shark information that we found out, because we've had such long-term information, we've seen them coming back to same nurseries. What we're seeing is that the females are like that were born there are still coming back to the area, even if there's no mangroves there anymore. So like they're so tuned in to like that's where they were born. So we think they're using like because they have electrosensory organs. So we think they're using like Earth's magnetic field somehow to find where they're going and navigate. So they've done some research with bonnethead sharks, which look like baby little hammerheads, sort of. And they put them in a huge like holding pen and like change the north and south poles basically around the pen to see like if they would orient actually to the same place they were going. And they would, like wherever the north changed to, they still went that way. So they weren't like relying on visual cues as much. They were actually relying on where's the magnetic field that I need to follow. So that's what we think a bit more, is that even if there is more suitable habitat, like they don't choose to go there. So we think it's driven more by magnetic fields that are determining where they're going, because we've seen these females they're still coming back to areas where there's not mangroves anymore. They were there when they were born, but they've been taken out, and we still see them dropping their pups there. And we're like, oh, I wish you could go to a different area. And there's like no movement between nurseries at all, between the individuals that are there, which they're not even that far apart. They're maybe a few hundred meters apart. They don't even go between those areas. So they just have such a small area that they're tuning in on specifically. So yeah, we think maybe visual cues help them find some areas, but they're not relying on it. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's something we're still like trying to look at for sure. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. Okay. So my first one is, how do you catch the adult sharks?
Oh, okay, great question. I wish I would have put this video in here because I do have a video of us actually going through the whole process that I made, so I can show it to you. But we mostly use something called drum lines, which basically looks like, so there will be this big anchor, basically. And then there's a float line coming up from it, and it has a float at the top, so we're able to see that float. And then it has a line coming off it with a hook. So that's how we catch some of the bigger sharks as well. And we'll actually like hook in that float line, bring it in, attach it to the boat, and then while we're bringing up that anchor, then the shark will be attached. And then we attach it like on cleats on the boat. We actually put a tail rope on the shark as well. So simultaneously, like 3 people are doing something at the same time. Someone's attaching that hook and trying to like bring it down. Someone then like grabs the tail, puts it on the cleat on the boat, and then someone grabs the dorsal fin. So someone's job like the whole time is to hold the dorsal fin. So we have to do like finger stretches because it hurts a lot.
So they're not usually sedated or anything? No?
Yeah, we don't sedate them because with the large sharks, like we're not able to monitor like how they're doing afterwards. We're sedated. And then we'd be afraid to like send them back out, like not fully, I guess.
Yeah.
But what we are able to do is actually like, you'll see in some of the pictures, we flipped them over. That puts them in a state called tonic immobility. And what it does is like, I don't know, this is with their orientation or something. When we flip upside down, they just go like calm, like zen. So we do a lot with them like upside down. But there's a lot we have to do with them also forward facing. And that's why we have to like attach them by all different angles there. But then we also use scientific long lines, and those aren't like commercial long lines. Like scientific long lines, we're monitoring the whole line. Like we set the line and then we go away on the boat, literally set an anchor and watch the line for an hour. And if we see like a splash or something, we'll go right over. So yeah, those are kind of the different ways. And I have some videos that I could show too. But yeah.
So you mean the line mean the gill nets?
So yes, the line, like it looks like a if you've ever gone fishing and you have a fishing line, ours is about like that thick. So it's a really thick line. And then we have like the hooks attached to also. And they're like really big hooks. They're probably about like that big to catch some larger sharks. And it's a big line that will basically like wheel in. There's a system like we'll wheel it all the way in. Sometimes the electronic if it wants to work, which a lot of times it doesn't. So we'll wheel it in, and as we're bringing it up, it will like come across all these hooks. We have about like 25 hooks on each line, and then if we reach that, then we'll stop, work with that shark, and then let that one go. Keep reeling in the line. So yeah. Yeah. And then what was your other question?
Well, my other question was just, what is your favorite documentary featuring? Since there are hundreds.
That's a hard one. So I'll admit I'm a Shark Week hater. I used to really like it before I researched sharks a lot, but now I'm a big hater because most of it that you watch is just for like quick like attention grabs, and they have all these celebrities and they're not doing any science. I'm just like, what am I watching? They're just like putting a celebrity in a cage just to be like, oh, I'm diving with a shark and it looks scary. And I'm like, no, don't tell people they're scary. So I actually watched Shark Fest on National Geographic, and that one goes for a month. It's not just a week; it goes for a whole month. So if you want to watch Shark Fest, that's a lot better. I really like this one documentary that was a part at the beginning of middle of 2024, and it was called Ocean Explorers, and that one was really cool because there was this huge vessel called the Ocean X vessel, basically, and they came to Bimini. They did a ton of submarine dives and actually like started to map the area around there and start looking at like some geological features and stuff. And our president was in that, and I got to be behind the scenes. So for some shots, I was like, what? So that one's, and it's just super well done. That one's really cool. So Ocean Explorers, and I think we were like episode 3 or 4, and it was called Hammerhead Highway. So they were looking at hammerheads specifically, but I like that one. I'll have to think about some more, but any Shark Week ones, I mean, like, ugh, don't like it. No. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So how expensive those sensors, like acoustic sensors and the satellite
They
sensors?
were expensive. Yeah. So for the acoustic tags, for the big ones that are probably about like as big as my palm, each one is $500. But if it comes with a like temperature sensor too, because sometimes I have a temperature depth sensor, they're $750 for each one. So that's why you see like the nurse shark was only like there's only 20 tags because they cost so much money.
So you cannot reuse.
No, yeah, so we can't reuse this, and especially because like internal, like in the shark tooth, we don't know, like we just stop pinging, like, oh, it could have gone anywhere, we don't know. But for the satellite tags, those are $1,500 each one of those. But so those sometimes we can retrieve because we know when it popped off because it starts sending like a ton of information to us. So sometimes we can retrieve those and like turn them into the place to be reused, but it's really hard to do. But each individual like receiver too that we put underwater is like thousands of dollars. So it's pretty crazy. It's expensive stuff. But that's why I'm starting to do genetic tagging, because a genetic tag, we just take a small little sample from them and I can see their history back to like thousands of years ago, what they've been doing and stuff. So it's a lot cheaper in the grand scheme of things, I guess. So
Besides like nurse sharks in Bahamas and Bimini, is there any other place and any other shark that you've been like I really want to work on these?
well, there's I don't know. They're pretty cool. You should look them up. It's called short-tailed nurse shark. So it's still nurse shark. It gets to be like about a meter long, and they only exist around Madagascar in like a small area of East Africa. Like, and that's it. And that's all we know about them. And so they're critically endangered, and no one's done like any research on them. But we do have some in the U.S. at like 4 different aquariums, and so I feel like it'd be a really cool opportunity to get some baseline data, and I may possibly be working on kitchen finding to do something with them. But if it wasn't with them, I don't know, it was pretty generic, but I mean, I would love to see like a white shark. That'd be really cool. But yeah, or a whale shark too, or something. Yeah, but I love my nurse sharks. So.
I do have a question on Zoom
Oh,
from Rich Nelson.
hi, Rich.
So it's, hey Bailey, great presentation and fascinating information. Oh yeah, he's waving. I don't know if we can alter that so it shows up. But he says, you noted the international sanctuary where fishing for sharks is prohibited.
Mhm.
Interesting how that was formed across an area with so many political jurisdictions.
Yeah,
And also, are you observing your type of research information being well received by those entities to help protect shark habitat or migration corridors, etc.?
that's such a great question. So Bahamas specifically, it's interesting because if you remember like that tiger shark graph that I showed with the abundance trends, and it's in Bahamas, it's stable. Well, it's interesting because after the Bahamas Shark Sanctuary was established, a lot of locals and tourists were just saying, oh my gosh, like tiger sharks are booming out of control because of the shark sanctuary. They're all out of control, no one's allowed to regulate them anymore. But with our data, we were able to show, no, they're not. They've been stable since the 1980s. So that's been cool to say that. And also something I always say with the media too is think about like 10 years ago. The media isn't even close to like where it's at now, where now we have drones that can actually go out and just find like sharks in the area. We have so much more technology, we're able to actually like track these sharks and where they're going. So even though it may look like the areas that they didn't previously inhabit, we might have technology to actually show that they're there now before we didn't. So that's kind of what I always say to that. But like different areas in the collaboration network between all the receivers too. Yeah, I mean, between like researchers, we've been able to work like pretty well together. I'm actually trying to help establish a movement between the Bahamas and East Florida right now. So yeah, with the IUCN, so that's been cool. Yeah, so I kind of know what the perceptions are in the Bahamas, but in Florida it can be varied too with the different conservation events that I've done. There's somewhere it's well received and there's somewhere it's not. So I've learned a lot of how to communicate this information to different groups of people. Thanks, Rich.
Go last, but it was good presentation.
So, anything else?
Maybe we have time for like one more question if anybody has any.
Shark species that you're working with, so the tiger sharks, lemon, are they all pretty docile? Do you have any like safety precautions in place?
They're all pretty feisty. So lemon sharks are the most feisty. When we get a lemon shark, we're like, okay, oh boy, everyone watch out, because lemon sharks, what just makes them a bit more dangerous, that they can actually bite their tail. They can do like a donut, and they're very flexible. Whereas some other shark, like a huge tiger shark, it's just like, it's fine, just don't get near the mouth. So yes, like the precautions that we do take like on the boat and everything, and we've all taken like trauma like classes too, so we have like a ton of training in that. And also the different measures where we like are securing like the hook line, so 3 points of contact having on them, and like the person's job on the dorsal fin too that's holding it, they're holding that the whole time because they're also trying to feel any differences in the shark if they're about to like do that or tense or anything. Like one time I think I was doing that to a lemon shark and I was like, hands off, because I was far enough away, but like the person at the head like trying to measure them like took the hands off because the shark literally went like and like tried to like bite the boat, and so it was that was mad. So yeah, so we do take like precautions like that, and having those 3 points of contact provides like the best. But of course, like there's some feisty ones too.
Right. So what about when you're like in the water taking pictures of the shark, like when you guys are working on with it off the side of the boat, like?
Oh, yeah. So yes. So like when I was doing all the photography, like some of those pictures I would like get in the water, like while they were working with the shark. I would say like the most scared I was when I was with probably a bull shark, just because they're a bit more unpredictable. And they told me like get out of the water before they released that one, because I was in like super murky water. Secure, like they're pretty safe. And we have them like pretty attached. And I've never seen one like actually like break off and like swim away, because our gear's pretty sturdy. But yeah, of course, just like diving with them too. Actually, that's when I feel like the safest, to be honest, because they literally are in their habitat, swimming around. They don't care what we're doing. Yeah, there was one time too, we had caught like a sawfish. I don't know. They're like huge species. And they have this huge like rostrum
Mhm.
on their head, like of just all these, whatever. So I could show a picture of that if anyone wants to see too, but I got in the water with that one and there was a current that kept like moving me towards the rostrum. And one time I like didn't notice too, and like I got kind of close and someone was like, and I got close enough to get like caught and I was like, oh shoot. So yeah, we just have to be like pretty careful, yeah,
Yeah.
especially with some of those dangerous animals too, but yeah, but I mean like I've never felt a danger. Anytime I've been in the boat, there's never been any like dangerous situations either. So yeah. Just, there's those things we're like thinking about too and checking the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, says thank you, by the way.
Thanks for joining, Rich.
And thank all of you for coming to our seminar. We are out of time for today, but let's give Baylie another round of it. And feel free to take some pizza, I'm sure we have plenty, and if you haven't signed the sheet out there, if you go ahead and sign that. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Bailey. You did the last one, I did the first one.
I know, I saw it was the next one.